Hello there. Welcome to Mbaise USA Decides 2024. And today we're taking a very different step from what you used to see bringing candidates. We're bringing an umpire today, a man who will play a role in ensuring that we have the right caliber of people emerge as leaders of Mbaise USA going forward from July 2024. I am Cliff Ayozie, and I have with me my colleague, Dr. Norma Nonso Opara. Nonso, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Onuoha. It's a pleasure having you here with us tonight.
My
Well,
pleasure.
let's get into Dr. Onuoha, who is our guest today. He's been the National Secretary of Mbaise USA, also served as Secretary of Mbaise People's Association, currently a member of Mbaise United Association, an intellectual by every point of that very definition. And it's my pleasure to welcome the Secretary of the Electoral Committee of Mbaise USA 2024 elections, Dr. Pat Onuoha. It's our pleasure to welcome you.
Good evening, Cliff and Dr. Nanswapara, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Welcome.
Okay, let's kickstart this because we're talking about elections and people have different ideas. How is it going to pan out? Looking at what is happening in the platforms, people trying to find their space to say their message. How do you look at this very assignment?
Well, thank you for that question. Let me let me take a little back and start by saying that the Electoral Committee is a creation of the Board of Delegates. Article 7 of the Constitution, Section 3, subsection C, 1 of it, set aside the creation of an electoral committee to serve as an umpire to usher in the election, whether it is that of 2024 or subsequent years. And so the powers and the legitimacy and authority of the electoral committee derive from the Board of Delegates. And with the creation of electoral committee, in September 30th, on September 30th, 2023, that was when that committee was created. We've gone ahead to put in place modalities to ensure that the elections are conducted in a peaceful manner, very transparent, timely manner, and that everything works out to ensure that we have credible election unmatched in the history of Mbaise USA. That in and of itself makes it a humongous task for us, for you to do the right thing, to ensure that the right stuff, the right people emerge, and the things are conducted in the right manner. Makes it a little bit tedious. But I think we are equal to the task because we have done things we say we are going to do based on our schedule, on our guidelines so far, and with minimum hitches, but not unconnected with a normal process like this. So to answer your question, it is humongous, but we are following it according to schedule.
Okay, talking about following it and all that, you've issued a number of warnings and all that. Before we talk about who qualifies or who does not qualify and the process of it, what really informed those warnings that you gave out?
I wouldn't really call them warnings. I will prefer to call them guidelines. In any arrangement like this, there are bound to be rules and regulations that serve as a guardrail for the conduct of an election of this magnitude, especially something like this time around. And for some reason, you probably know better than I do, it has generated more interest than previous elections. And so, what informed our decision to put these guardrails is the fact that we are all from the same family, quote unquote. We are from the same people, we're the same tribe, the same community, the same heritage. And regardless of who emerges the winner after this July election, we all go back to being who we were, members of the same family. eating and drinking and having communion together. So there is no reason why people should really kill themselves, quote unquote, impugn other people's character, malign them, or assassinate them, or say things that are unprintable just because of election. And we decided that part of our responsibility to put in place modalities and conduct and guidelines to ensure a peaceful conduct of election. And of course, if you don't put regulations without saying what the sanctions will be, that's probably where it appears to be as warning. But we say, hey, don't do this so that we don't end up doing things that we're doing. So it is the idea that we want to ensure that a very well coordinated, peaceful, transparent election emerges at the end of the day, devoid of whoever emerges as a winner. And to get that done, we needed to have some different things in place. And that's why we have those guidelines.
No, sir.
Okay, sir. Dr. Dr. Noah, thank you so much for the response so far. So, what do you say to those people who are concerned, who are worried, or who have verbalized their concern that they don't think the election will be run fairly and justly? That's one question, if that's a word. Yes, let me have you answer that first. What do you say to those people who are currently, as you know, Mbaise USA is very highly polarized right now. We did talk about this earlier today. Um, and there are groups or members of the organization who, for whatever reason, are afraid that the election would not be fair and just. What do you say to those people?
All right, thank you very much for that question. Let me start by answering that question this way. Because I'm involved, this is part of Onuoha, and I'm involved in this election. Everybody can go and sleep and snore and know that this election will be done, conducted the way it is supposed to be. Nothing short of that.
Yes.
My commitment to service dates back to not just when I was in college or in the universities on those days, no, but my baptism of service, I will call it that way, has something to do with integrity, so much of it. It began with my involvement in the Rotary Club, the Rotary Service. There's what we call ideal of service. Ideal of service as a basis for worthy enterprise. It is an integral part of who I have become. It is my DNA. If my hands are there, if my name is mentioned, it must be the way it's supposed to be, or you won't have me there. I'll be the first to resign rather than tarnish my image. That's one. Two, I'm somebody who is not afraid to take a minority decision. I'm never afraid to be in the minority, so long as I'm sure that what I'm pursuing is the right cause. I will stick to that. It has to be that way. So that is my person. So anybody who knows me and who knows my involvement, who knows my engagement, whether in community service or in professional service or whatever, should know that if I'm involved, it better be right. Okay. If it's not, don't bring it close to me. That's one. Two, this committee is dedicated to a cause. And that cause is to ensure the freest and fairest general election ever in the history of Mbaise USA. Now, I'm not saying that to suggest in any way that previous elections have not been fair or fair. But Pat Onuoha has not been involved in previous elections. This one better be clean, fair, and smooth. I know that people have interest in this, and I don't begrudge them their interest. People have right to be interested in this election. I mean, Mbaise USA has grown. When we started, we were about 8 chapters. We moved over to 13, became 16. Today, we're 24 chapters. So anybody who is interested in leading an organization like this has to really have some muscles. You need to be prepared. So it's a big organization. But inherent in that size of the organization is the fact that people have various interests, various approaches to what we do, and we know that very, very well. But as a committee, our concern is not what individual interests are. Our committee is to ensure that that which the Constitution says is the way to conduct this election. The modalities, the structures, the guidelines, the conditions, all of which the committee is empowered to execute, that we do it fairly, without concern, without fear or favor, without looking at anybody, without minding whose call is God's, whether it is Mr. A or whether it is Mr. B. And so when somebody looks at it, when we make a pronouncement and candidate A thinks, oh, it favors candidate B, and candidate B thinks it is things like that don't detract us. We don't go back to or make those pronouncements because candidate A complained. Our concern is we sat down, we met, we discussed, and we figured out that this is the way to go. So as a secretary, I will make that pronouncement, I write it out and say, this is what the committee has decided. And we move forward. Because what is of interest to us is this decision is what puts us closer to that objective of ensuring that we have the fairest election ever. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yes, sir, you did.
Well, moving forward, a couple of days ago, you came out with a release saying that you've concluded the submission of applications. People have all applied, and the deadline is closed. And within days, you're going to give insight into the applications. Would you want to talk along that line and possibly how people conformed, to those very guidelines you've outlined? And sometimes we talk about a whole lot about elections. There is much more to election than you talk about. You say you're going to also investigate those that applied. What are the things you look at for?
Okay. The first publication we released was to show what our timetable looked like, what we intend to do, when we intend to do that. So we gave ourselves time to do this. We said we'll release nomination forms on the 1st of March, and we did that. And we gave 60 days for candidates, interested candidates, to submit their nominations, going through the appropriate channels, through their chapter presidents and stuff like that, clear themselves and that stuff. And those 60 days expired or came to an end on the 1st of this month. That's 2 days ago. And by 12:15 on the 1st, I wrote and said that we have closed nomination. And that's what we did. Now, within this week, what we are doing is to compile the names of candidates who submitted their nomination forms on time. Even now where there are more than one candidate, maybe where there are two candidates applying for the same post, and so on and stuff like that. It takes a while, but we are streamlining them. Where there are only one candidate in one post, that presupposes the fact that that person is running on a post. So that will take us a few days. That's why we said within the next few days, we're going to publish formally the list of people who complied with that directive, with that process, that phase of that electoral process. That is submission of electoral nomination forms. When we finish with that, then we'll go to the next phase of the electoral process. So it's stage by stage. The stage where we are now is to compile the names of candidates who have submitted their nomination forms. And it is going on fine according to schedule. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Constitution is a bit silent on the qualifications, that candidates should have for particular positions. You say you're going to investigate people. What would you be looking at for?
We didn't say we are going to investigate anybody.
You said you're going to look into the candidates.
Yeah, but we never say we are going to investigate anybody. We don't have those powers.
So how would you say this?
And such words never appeared in any one of our pronouncements.
Okay, how would you confirm who is qualified or not qualified?
How did we establish the minimum criteria for running for positions?
Okay, the Constitution, the Board of Delegates appointed a committee to set up guidelines. It wasn't set up by this committee. This committee received these guidelines. The guidelines that enunciated a minimum qualification for candidates. And those minimum qualifications include, but are not limited to, the fact that you have to be a bona fide member of a chapter. You have to have fulfilled your financial obligations to your chapter to ensure that the chapter fully positions you or submits your name to contest election. If you are serving at the national level, let's say you are serving as a president, or you are contesting as a president or vice president, you ought to have served in a capacity at the national level that gave you that platform to be able to aspire to serve at that such a high office. In other words, you want to be a president of Mbaise USA, for instance, you ought to have a previous experience in a position that gave you ability to serve in Mbaise, whether it is at the national level or the local level, but you ought to have served. Perhaps the area that might be of interest to you, or where you are trying to figure out, is where we talked about somebody whose credibility is not in question. We don't want somebody who has had a felony charge, who has been convicted, and we put it there in our electoral form, so that the president of the association is going to authenticate your candidacy and going to ensure that this candidate has no such baggage, so to say. And we said on that form that there should be a notary. That form should be notarized. If you saw that form should be notarized and signed by a notary public. And the president is the one that will say that this person whose name appear on box A, B, and C is who he say he is, or she say he is. And then we don't have any baggage. We don't have to have any problems looking backward that this person emerges tomorrow as a national officer of this association. So between the financial obligation and ensuring that the person is somebody with a clean record, that is where you are talking about investigation. But it is a collaboration between the chapter that is submitting this name and the electoral committee, just to ensure that we have correct people at the right place.
So how would you know you received the right information?
Because we're in liaison, we're in touch with all the presidents. Part of this compilation now is that we're going to now take time to ask each of the presidents the character a little bit of each of the candidates that submitted their forms before we publish them. We are putting down questions now to address to each president that signed his or her name there, to ensure that he can stand by the candidate that he vowed for, that he signed the form and then sent to us. So we're going to do that. Hopefully that will also go well.
Sorry, Dr. Onuoha. I probably might not want to get a little too deep into this question that I have for you. You said that it has to be established that the person doesn't have any felony charges, right? And
yes.
Are you going to cut some slacks to Mbaise sons and daughters who could be victims of circumstances? For instance, a lot of people in the medical field might find themselves involved in legal battles, some of which may not be clearly their fault, right? Does that disqualifies the person from serving in Mbaise, or do you guys put certain convictions into consideration? I know this is the United States of America, and people are not supposed to participate if they're felonies, but I believe in second chances, and I also know that the justice system sometimes can be compromised. And I will feel, as an Mbaise daughter or an Mbaise son, if you find yourself in certain circumstances, your Mbaise home should be a safe haven, and we should at least make sure that even if the system doesn't believe that person, that Mbaise USA should be a place for that person to feel at home. And thus, we shouldn't that shouldn't make that person incapable of serving Mbaise. Can you please address that for me a little bit? Because this is my first time of hearing it, and I think it's something that we
Okay,
definitely.
let me say this.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to go too much into depth in that field, in that sphere.
Yes, sir.
Reason being that um, that would be a committee decision, really, where we have to go in that direction, legally or otherwise. But
Yes,
as a
sir.
member of this committee,
Yes.
my thinking is that, and I'm not speaking for the committee this time, I'm just saying
Yes.
as a member, my thinking is if you have some people who have some kind of legal infringement as a result of their profession,
Yeah.
shouldn't really be penalized or prevented from serving their community. That is my if you ask me as a person.
Yes,
I
sir.
think what they are looking at here in talking about felony, for somebody who is charged with a crime like rape or murder, and then you all of a sudden you bring that person to saddle him with the responsibility of serving a community that has gone to is no longer a private 501c3 organization. It is now a public
Absolutely.
501c3 organization, and people should know
Absolutely.
that.
Yes.
So we should be interested in who is represented, who is carrying our flag at that level.
Absolutely.
I
Yes,
don't know
sir.
whether that answers your question.
Absolutely. It answers my question. So
Thank
there's
you.
room for second chances for those who
Thank you.
deserve
Sure.
it.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, sir. I
Oh,
have
well,
another
I think,
question for you, sir. Oh, sorry. Go
okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, sir, please.
Yeah,
I
go
have
ahead,
another
Manasseh.
question for you, sir.
Yes.
Working with this committee, knowing you, Dr. Onoha, you must have identified some issues or some parts of some protocols that you would change or do differently, or I mean, design differently to better suit our Mbise people. Do you mind sharing some of those gaps that you've identified? I know this sounds like a cliche because I always ask this question, but I'm very much interested in those things because that's how the organization is going to move forward. What have you identified as a member of this committee, electoral committee, that you think can be changed going forward, or you think might hinder the the might hinder the progress of the organization if not changed, if any?
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a very beautiful question. Excuse me. Very beautiful question. But unfortunately, you're not going to get a full answer from me. But I like the question. The reason is this. Um, yes, there are some loopholes, there are some things that we have identified, and we're compiling them.
Okay.
We're compiling them. We will now send them, make this recommendation to the to the board of delegates as
Yes.
our submission based on these responsibilities that you guys gave us. These are the things we found out. These are the things we think could be changed to make sure that this works better.
Okay.
But in terms of giving specific ideas of what we have done, this is not a proper forum to do that because we have not yet, we're still in the process of compiling them. That's one. Two. Second is that as a member of the board of delegates representing my own chapter, some of these recommendations will go through my chapter in terms of our recommendation to the board of delegates, what we call chapter recommendations that will go into reframing the constitution when it's being reviewed. So
Okay.
again, it means this is not the proper place to discuss that. But yes, there are things we have identified and we are making recommendations to the appropriate quarters.
Okay. Thank you. Fair
Okay.
enough.
So I know the committee remains on top of his mandate towards ensuring that we have a free, fair, and credible election. The
Sure.
first stage of it has just closed. That is the emergence of those aspiring to contest positions. Uh, did you get reports of any challenges of possibly potential candidates not getting the signature of their president in any way? Because the Constitution says that the president must append his or her signature for the application to go forward. Is there an alternative way of making application if the person suffers any setback getting the approval of his president?
Um, you are now delving into the intricate part of the committee's responsibilities, and I won't be fair to the committee if I'm sharing such internal dynamics on the public platform. But suffice it to say that as at the first of this month, we concluded that phase. So even if we had issues, those ones have been dealt with. So, but I won't be fair to the committee if I begin to dissect the internal workings of the committee and how we arrived up to this point. But it's just to say that we completed that place and it went peacefully, and then we are at the phase now where we are compiling a list of candidates who have submitted their nomination forms, and we'll make this public in a very few days.
Yeah, I asked this question because going forward, things are bound to change because you want to make recommendations, and there are certain developments that transpired preparatory to getting to this deadline. Did you get such reports, or how did you feel when you got such reports?
Let me borrow the part of the answer I gave to Dr. Namsopara. It will be in our recommendation when we send the recommendation to the board.
Okay, what is the plan going forward? Because we know that we're in May, and by next month we are gearing towards realizing that objective of electing the right leaders. What are the programs you put in place towards achieving that task and the buy-in of Mbaise?
All right, thank you again for that question. That's a very good one. In the electoral guideline that is, the timetable that we set at the start of this process, we stated what we were going to do, each time, schedule by schedule. But there was an item that we didn't put in there, but which has emerged, and we have considered that we are going to go that way, and that is to schedule a national visual town hall debate. We didn't factor that. We didn't put it in our original schedule, but the committee thinks that's the right way to go. These people deserve the right to know their candidates, talk to them, have the candidates address MDC people in a virtual town hall format, field questions. We know they have been canvassing, they have been globetrotting, they have been moving back and forth and stuff like that, visiting chapters. But this is a format that will bring the entire MDC together and have the chapter, the candidates, not just two candidates, the candidates will, assemble and address MDC on their manifestos, what they want to bring to MDC, why they think they deserve our votes. MDC people deserve to be so informed. So the committee is currently working out the modalities in collaboration with what we call the technical committee. And in the next few days, we'll push out the more details about this. But in between this time, and when the election proper, the convention holds, I think sometime between the month of May and the month of June, we are trying to find an appropriate time to put in this very important program, the virtual town hall debate. So it's going to happen. And that's what we're working. That's will be the next phase. And after that, the next will be paperwork, documentation, printing of materials, and so on and so forth. You probably will hear less of our voices at that time, and more of seeing what we're doing at the back to make sure that we are prepared for the election in July.
Okay,
do you have any challenges?
Of course. The challenges include, I don't know whether the challenges will reduce now that we have come to this point, but my phone, you can imagine, goes, sometimes it goes off the hook. I receive emails, text messages, people trying to get this information or that information. People think we are not doing this. And that is part of it's part of the game. But you have to stand firm to who you are, so long as you know that the cause is, you are focused on the cause, you are doing the right thing. They ask questions. I make sure that most times I don't answer questions. I don't answer because I work. I do other things that I'm very, very busy. So if you call the phone and I don't answer, I send a text message, say who you are, find a time, and I'll reply the text. We'll schedule a time. You call me back, I'll call you back. But there is nobody that tried to reach me that I avoid. because I know that I'm at the public forum. You talk to me, you want to talk to me, you reach me. And I'll make sure that I talk to you, I answer your question. I might not give you the exact answer, the answer you want, but I will talk to you. I won't avoid talking to you because I don't want to talk to you. So I want to use this medium to appeal to people who claim they have made efforts to reach me and they have not been possible. This is the reason. It's not that Pat Onuoha is avoiding talking to anybody. No. But anybody who has eventually found time to talk to me, make sure will tell you that I was very, very open. I talk to everybody that comes my way. So in terms of challenges, yeah, it's the pressure of trying to find out, oh, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? We expect that it should happen, but it's not structured enough to shift our focus from what we are doing now at all. We are focused and we are getting to destination gradually, step by step, but we'll get there.
No, sir.
Okay, sir. Um, Dr. Noah, two questions. The
So,
debate that you, or town hall debate that you talked about earlier, what efforts are you making to make sure that both parties, as whether we like to admit this or not, Mbaise is clearly divided right now. What efforts it's the committee making to make sure that we will identify, or the moderators will be people that are viewed from both parties as completely neutral, and that way we can gain the trust of Mbaise, members of Mbaise Association from both parties. One. Secondly, would this town hall happen in one day? Can we have all the candidates together in one virtual space in one day, or is there going to be a schedule for different candidates running for different offices? So the first question is, how do we identify those neutral people that will moderate the debate, making sure that is a very safe place for all the candidates involved?
okay, let me start from the second one, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. No, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Um, it is not likely to be one day with the debate still for one day because of the number of candidates that have shown interest.
Yes.
Now, this part of the release, my committee has not even discussed this. So they might chew me out and say, hey, doc, why did you have to tell them this when you haven't told us how many people submitted the form? So members of my committee, if you are listening, please uh, forgive me for this. But to answer this question, yes, it's not likely to be one day because of the number of candidates that have shown interest. And this is a very good thing.
Yes, sir.
The second part is easier. The second question is easier. We are working out the modalities. And when we get to that point, the modalities will eventually address some of these things. But trust the electoral committee that you guys have in place, and we will ensure that people get satisfied with the outcome of the debate. Also note, as a very important point, note that this is the very first time in the history of this association that this form of this thing is taking place, this kind of debate is taking place. We have never had it before. So are there likely to be flaws? Or are people likely to be dissatisfied? Yeah, it's possible. But again, the focus of the electoral committee is to ensure that we deliver a very crisp, fair, and sound election that will satisfy the needs of Mbaise people. And so we're going to do everything within our powers to ensure that we will maintain the trust of Mbaise people. The modalities are being worked out as we speak, and we will get to that place. We'll announce it when we get to that point.
Thank you.
Dr. Onuoha, one will want to just, for sake of curiosity, because you're trying to adjust the guidelines or come up with guidelines to ensure that we have a free, fair, and credible election. Looking at the way we vote, in such elections, the one we had was last 2 years, and they're supposed to take place every 2 years. Do you foresee any changes that you intend to introduce in terms of people casting their ballot, delegates casting their ballot, as the case may be?
Chris, easy question again. It will be part of our recommendation. It will go to the board.
We forgot that you're a lawyer. I don't know.
But we are supposed to enlighten people. We're supposed to enlighten people, carry people along as it goes on. As an electoral body, these guidelines should come and people will have that in mind and also key into supporting you, making a success of it. This is the essence of this interaction. But
I
holding
understand
back
that.
such things, that's not be most
I fully
beneficial. I
understand
don't
that.
know.
I fully understand that. I'm not holding back. There's this thing they say, when a matter is in the court, then you don't discuss that matter. It's already in the court. This is already in the process. This is already something, things we are going to, the board, the electoral committee has not concluded this process. When we conclude this process, there are things that might emerge from this process, this electoral process, that will now find their way into this compendium we have compiled, this compilation that we're making in terms of our recommendations. What you are saying might be part of this. So the committee has to vote to say, hey, yeah, we think this merits our being sent to the board. So if I tell you this now, and the committee meets after the election and they strikes this out and say, no, 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 we don't discuss that, then I'm giving you information that is not right. So I will say, please be patient. What I can tell you is that at the conclusion of this exercise, this committee will go back and look at the things that we did, areas of challenge, areas we found is easy, our recommendations, things that we think can be put in place to help the next committee, whenever that will happen, and we'll make these recommendations, things that will even find their way into the constitution for review purposes. We'll draft those, and it will be part of our recommendations, our report, and we'll send it to the committee. Watch out for this. It's probably going to be part of it.
Now, sir, I know you have your last question before we wrap it up.
Yes, sir. Looking at the timeline that you guys published for election activities, do you think the timeline allows for excellent preparation for the candidates? Or are there, I was going to ask if there are some changes that you would think you will make in the future, but I'm sure you're going to redirect me to your earlier answer. But do you think the timeline allows for enough time for our candidates to prepare and deliver their best speeches during the debate and on the election day?
All right. So I like the way you are coming from various angles to the same question, or to get the answers for the same question, but you're coming through the same different angles, and I admire your ingenuity. But again, yeah, it will be part of our recommendations.
Okay.
And so far, we have not had complaints from either person saying that, hey, or any candidate saying that they don't have enough time to do what they want to do. We have not had that complaint. But the overall picture is that there is going to be a comprehensive report that contains our recommendations that will go to the board of delegates. Again, your question will be fully addressed when we make that recommendation.
Okay.
You see, I'm not trying to avoid your question, right? You see?
But you're avoiding it all the
No,
same, very smartly.
I did not.
Well,
Yes, yes,
Dr. Noah,
I understand your point. I understand the position that you're in. I respect that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
yeah,
Cliff.
Dr. Noah, you set out rules to ensure that you have free and fair election, free, fair, and credible election. And
Mhm.
that starts with, it's a process actually, which starts from the filing of your interest, moving to campaigns, and of course, talking to people to vote for you. If part of what you've set out to achieve, the rules guiding this very election, is infringed upon, you find out that it's infringed upon, what kind of action are you going to take? So far as like in 2014, I know that there was a bribery scandal that some candidates were bribed, to swear their votes to a particular person. And this could reoccur, or this could recur at this very election, because people want to be in positions and they go out of their way. All sort of things are put in place to ensure that they get the votes they desire. And we're in America, where certain conducts you do, you might pretend that, well, you can get smart with that, but you could get caught up. And that's some of the mistakes we make and falling for it. Are you looking in that direction? And what will happen to those people that go against such rules? or apply unorthodox means of weighing people into supporting them?
Um, the guidelines, the electoral guidelines are clear, as stated, and there is a clause that says violators of these guidelines may be sanctioned. And don't forget that the bylaw and the electoral guideline itself proper gave the electoral committee the powers to set up the guidelines to execute this project, this election. In other words, we derive our powers from the electoral guidelines, which emanate from the clause in the constitution that says the board of delegates will set up this committee and empower it with the authority to draw up guidelines to execute an election. Okay, so if somebody violates this, what we'll do is to look and be sure, excuse me, look at what the person has done, and if it merits sanction, we refer that person to the board of delegates for appropriate sanction, and recommend perhaps that the board of delegates should send the person to ethics committee if it is not what the delegates will do themselves. The electoral committee will continue to serve as an umpire, but we are not to litigate. We leave the litigating part of it to the board of delegates that set up the committee. This committee will begin and end on July the 14th, thereabout. If we stay one more week or two after the July 14th, it is to write our report and submit it. By the end of July, the lifespan of this committee would have ended. But the board of delegates continues to exist. So all we'll do is to make referral and say, we think in the process of conducting this election, A, B, C, D violated what we set up as our code of conduct. It is up to you. We refer them to you guys to look at and apply appropriate sanctions where you deem necessary. That's what we'll do.
Well,
so that's not
I don't know. Well, it's a scenario that plays out there. You've answered, because I asked this with interest, looking at various scenarios of what happens in an election. Now that everybody will be going to North Carolina, somebody could, extend their hand of friendship with intention, to influence you, possibly pay your flight, make reservation for you, and expect you to play ball along that line. That's a scenario that could happen. But having said that, I don't know your parting word. What role do you want in Mbaise to play to support you to make a success of this very assignment that you are given?
Thank you again, Chris. Cliff. First of all, before I make this appeal, I'm not aware even that people could pay flights. So nobody has approached me to pay my own flight. So if you see anybody who wants to, please let them know that they can pay my flight, but don't expect me to, But that's I don't know that I'm not aware that such things happen. But if they do, so be the electoral committee. The board of delegates has their eyes and ears, and I'm sure they will figure out how to deal with this. But if we spot violations in any capacity, any form at all, capable of derailing this push to ensure that we have a credible election, we will not hesitate to make a very strong recommendation to the board of delegates. Recommendation that will send whoever the culprit is to ethics committee. You can take that from me. We will not hesitate in making that recommendation. Anybody at all. So, having said that, our appeal is to, first of all, is to people as a whole to have patience with us and give us time to execute this stage by stage as processed, as we promised to do. Second is, and more importantly, is to have trust, faith, and confidence in the committee you set up because of the composition of people in that committee. I know that everybody in the committee, the 5-member committee, plus the legal advisor that we have, who is a non-voting member of the committee, we don't take decisions without meeting. That is why we have had as many meetings as I can't say. We meet almost every week. Whenever you see me write something, is the result of a meeting that was held previously. So we agree on everything that comes out of that. And we know that we are on we are on a survey. People look at us. People are looking at what we are going to do. So everybody is conscious of that fact. And what we owe the same people is to do our best to ensure that that objective, again, the objective of conducting the fairest, most credible, and transparent election ever, is met. And in doing that, are we likely to have people here and there complain? Oh yeah, we will. But is that enough? Will that detract us? It will not. So I'm appealing on behalf of the committee, the same people, to have confidence in the committee, knowing that we will do what we say we'll do. Again, because of the people involved, we will do what we say we'll do. We owe it to the same people, wherever they are, to ensure that we conduct an election that will usher in the next line of administrators from the same USA here. Two, or three, is to allow them to ask them to give us some patience. Don't be in a hurry. For instance, between yesterday and today, between the first day, the third, between yesterday and today, I've had 4 calls, one text message, 4 calls asking me when the debate is coming up. And meanwhile, the committee hasn't even been put in place. And I understand that. I have had somebody asking me to ask a question that shouldn't really be asked to electoral committee. Can I confirm whether more chapters submitted names than other chapters? Can I do, things like that? So know that the electoral committee is like INEC. Don't approach INEC. Don't come to us. Don't call me for things that are integral to what we are doing to ensure that we maintain the integrity of this committee. This election. But with that said, so far we have thank people who have been giving us cooperation. These people have been wonderful. I'm not going to be complaining without applauding them for what they have been doing very, very well. We received cooperation from them, and we ask that they continue in this until we come to the end of this journey. July is almost here, and then we will, by the grace of God, by your special cooperation, by your assistance, I'm sure we will get to this point that we set this goal set for ourselves.
On that note, I'd like to say special thank you to Dr. Pat Onuoha for finding time to share thoughts with us, and I believe it's been most beneficial to our community. And of course, we know that you do a great job, and continue to wish you the best. And I know that Mbaise are ready to give you the best cooperation to make sure that at the end of the tunnel, the right leaders emerge. Free, fair, and credible process. On behalf of NOSO, my colleague, this is Cliff Ayozie. Wish you the very best.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.